Hello, this is Kylie J.N.S, and today we are going to be doing a mini book reading of my 7th book titled The Law of Gender, Incentivizing Feminine and Masculine Principles to Promote Harmonious Relationships. So, I actually created the outline for this book around 2016. I've written many of the outlines for my books years ago, but I just didn't have the time to actually just sit down and write until the pandemic had hit in, was it 2020? Yeah, so for the last 2 years, I've been able to actually just write a lot of the outlines out, and this is just one of the ones that I was able to get to, and I was very excited to write this book. And I wrote it mainly because I wanted to make sense around the ideas of gender that are talked about in social media, and even, in dogma in terms of religion. And I wanted to understand where were humans getting their definitions of what it means to be masculine and feminine, and where do they get those definitions from, and how do those traits impact relationships. So I noticed when I wrote the outline in 2016, there was like this constant talk and obsession with whether it be gender wars or I think there was one movement called Save Yourself, Black Man, and then it was one called MGTOW, then it was one called for women, Save Yourself, Black Women, and then there was this femininity movement, then it was the investment movement. It was just like all of these things around gender dynamics and dysfunctional relationships, or calling out dysfunctional behaviors relating to gender. All of that was going on in 2016. To be honest, it's still going on, particularly with this thing with the high value man and all these things. That's another thing that came out out of those movements as well. So I just started to ask myself, like, where are these definitions coming from in terms of empirical evidence, or was it based on nature? Like, what are the definitions logical? Are they indigenous to our culture? And by our culture, I'm talking about Black Americans in particular, or melanated people, what have you. I wanted to just really get down to the nitty gritty of whether our definitions of masculine and feminine principle could be found in nature. So that was my approach in uncovering the law of gender. And my approach to writing the book itself was to study the origins of the current definitions, any relevant philosophies, systems, or analogies or doctrines that it came from, and then to study if those philosophies and analogies aligned with phenomenon that can be seen with the naked eye. So some people call that physical causation or whatever, but for me it was important to align whatever was in these ideas from various cultures to see if it aligned with what you can just observe in nature and the universe itself. And then after that, I studied if those philosophies could be seen in the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, to get a sense of how gender actually influences social structures and behavior. And the reason for this approach was to remove the dogma and the deeply unscientific notions of what we are calling feminine and masculine energy. Because I wanted to determine if these ideas about the masculine and the divine feminine were aligned with nature, and if that could be the reason for the dysfunctional relationships in terms of its misalignment. So there is a general idea of what makes something masculine or feminine in terms of the traits and culture, obviously. But I do think that the community and the world at large gives very little attention to how these characteristics even came into existence. And I do make the argument that it is one of the big reasons why the men and the women are having such issues at odds in regards to the melanated people. And some ethnicities may have more issues than others. You know, if you're from, like, say, a tribe in Africa or in Caribbean, you may have very distinct elements of how this plays out versus, you know, in the UK or Black Americans in America. So, you know, I did take all of that into account. And again, the basis, the foundation of what I'm using as a litmus test or evidence would be the physical causation that you see in the world, or what you can see with your eyes and what you can observe objectively, and what current philosophies are in line with nature, which ones are not. And by nature, that could mean obviously things that occur within the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and certain phenomenon such as electromagnetism and whatnot. So this book in particular, it does uncover where the characteristics of the divine feminine and divine masculine principles came from, and how the law of gender manifests in human social structures. And then it covers what patriarchal societies and matriarchal societies look like with various animals. And to be honest, that was my favorite part of writing the book, was to study the animals and to look at their social structures in terms of how they relate to one another as females and males. That was really fascinating and cool because, again, you can see this biological hardwiring with the way males and females relate to one another. So some things that I just noticed across the board with humans and animals. And I know that in our intransigence to try to separate ourselves as these higher mental or higher cognitive thinking creatures over these animals, that can backfire, and it has been backfiring for the last thousands of years, in terms of our inability to just go with the flow of nature, to use those observations as a learning reference. Our separation from that is a detriment to the human race, if you ask me. But I covered the animals in the book just to give a sense of some of the concepts and the argument, to back up some of the things that I was saying in terms of my argument. And again, the ultimate goal of this book is to present a nature-based definition of the law of gender. And I am using the theories to promote balance between women and men, and to encourage humans to reflect on their current gendered social norms and social structures, and to determine if it aligns with nature. And we do that by incentivizing the divine feminine and divine masculine with one another. So what I'll do is I'll give you the definition of incentivization right now. And that is gendered behaviors within men and women that encourage the opposite sex to cooperate to one's benefit and the social order of that time, be it a patriarchal society or a matriarchal society. The gendered behaviors can be socially constructed or biologically hardwired, but they should never be oppressive to one another. Boom. So that is what incentivization means. So, in a gendered social structure, whether it is patriarchy or matriarchy, there is incentivization that must take place for both genders to go along with the social order of that time. And when it is not beneficial to both parties, societal rifts and dysfunctional behaviors will ensue inevitably. And for the last 2,000 years, we have been living under a patriarchal social structure. Before that, it was matriarchal. So the book explains the initial incentive of why women would want a patriarchal society, as well as why men would want a matriarchal society. It looks at both in its rawest forms, as well as the pros and cons of both societies as well. And then further along, I detail a system on how to implement that incentivization process via cooperation, reciprocity, pragmatism, very deep stuff. And at the end, there are some shadow work journal prompts for men and women to complete, to reflect on their own internal processes and their approach to relationships, and to consider how some of the things they went through as children could be affecting them in adulthood. Yeah, so it's very deep stuff. So I want to start by reading the introduction of the book, and then I will read a couple more samples. And if you have a background in, Hermetic philosophy or the Kabbalion or the teachings of, Tahuti, then it will be much easier to follow the framework of the book, to be quite honest. If you have somewhat of a background in evolutionary biology and and even physics. So my approach to scholarship is I do take a lot of interdisciplinary fields and look for integration amongst various theories or school of thoughts, and then I also do merge a lot of metaphysics with my work. That is just my approach. It's very unorthodox, but I try to make the case that a lot of these metaphysical ideas that exist, it does have its roots in physical causation and things that are naturally occurring. What many people ascribe to like the hard sciences, I would say that many of the ancient teachings use a lot of analogy to even pontificate about such ideas. So that's what I'll leave you guys with, and I will start by reading the introduction of the book. So let's begin. I got the idea to write a book about gender in 2016 when I was learning about the gender war and various streams of thought regarding masculinity and femininity. The discourse around these topics were interesting but often turned toxic because they were rooted in victim narratives or superficial notions of masculinity and femininity. Unfortunately, dialogue on gender is still skewed today. The definition of the divine masculine and divine feminine have become reduced to baseless pejoratives that are not found in nature and do not serve humanity. There's very strong claims, I know. This frustration has manifested into dysfunctional relationships, abandonment of duty, and outright hostility toward one another. Many of the gender movements that focus on self-development and the promotion of masculinity or femininity, such as going their own way or divesting or the manosphere or saving oneself, have limited understanding of what femininity and masculinity mean, because its definition in current society is profoundly unscientific and rooted in Western pedagogy, both of which have historically perverted these principles. As a result, many people are engaged in an endless gender war and are losing the ability to cultivate holistic relationships and even respect one another. I wrote this book to address these issues. The idea of feminine and masculine energy fascinates me, so I researched the historical, biological, and philosophical concepts of the law of gender from various cultures, including my own. I discovered the esoteric meaning of masculine and feminine energy rooted in science, and we can find them in the animal kingdom. And again, science, from my perspective, is not Western science. I do make the claim that what we are calling now science has its foundation in a lot of indigenous pedagogy. And then I'm going to go back to reading the introduction now. I want so clearly to see women and men healed and functioning at their highest state of mind. The law of gender starts by detailing the story of Goddess Kali and Lord Shiva and the demon Raktabija from the Devi Mahatmya text. This ancient text means glory of the goddess, written in 400 to 600 CE. This text is from the Shakti school of thought. This story will serve as an analogy for the definition of the law of gender because it has an occult meaning worth understanding. I will also explain the purpose of Shakti and its principles. The second chapter will further illuminate the esoteric definition of feminine and masculine energy by drawing upon the science of electromagnetism as a basis for my theories. This chapter illustrates the scientific case for the law of gender. The third chapter will expound on masculine and feminine characteristics and behaviors based on dualism, the animal kingdom, and common sense. I also explain ways to increase Shakti, which is feminine energy, and women, and how to increase masculine energy. The fourth chapter details gendered relationships in the animal kingdom to explain how some of these evolutionary dynamics are found in humans. Some animal species are patriarchal, while other animal species are matriarchal or even diarchal. So I will detail how these systems work using specific animals such as the elephant, lion, gorilla, praying mantis, bonobo monkey, spider, and more. I believe that the study of nature can teach us a lot about our own behaviors in reality. While humans have the obvious advantage of higher consciousness over the animal kingdom, many animals have fewer wars, hatred, and delusion. So I think it's in our best interest to observe nature as a path to introspection. The fifth chapter will detail how men can incentivize the divine feminine in women and how women can incentivize the divine masculine in men. Incentivization is but one solution to end the gender war and promote healthy relationships. Incentivization organization consists of two values, cooperation and reciprocity. I'll explain how each principle relates to the law of gender and why we need to develop cultural and spiritual values around these principles. Each value will allow us to appreciate one another and understand our specific needs in the hopes of alleviating confusion. This book is written from the Shakti, the dark feminine aspect rooted in Eastern Black American indigenous pedagogy. We will uncover the true essence of the divine feminine and masculine principles and learn about ourselves to develop genuine and fulfilling relationships. So that is the introduction to the book. And now we're going to read a bit from, let's see what chapter. We're going to read a little sample from chapter 2. And chapter 2 is called Law of Gender, Electromagnetism. So just one second, because I want to give you the date that I released this book. I published this on October 31st, 2021. And this is my favorite chapter. Well, I don't know, all of them is my favorite because I obviously got my rocks off writing such material. But anyways, let's begin. Gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to procreate, to generate, and to produce. The etymology of gender in ancient times was obviously different than today. The impermanent and permanent nature of gender can also be explained by the Yin and Yang concept of dualism, and it describes how contrary forces are actually equal and complementary, regardless of their different functions. Each force is interdependent and gives rise to consciousness. In dualism, yin is viewed as the negative principle in nature and is associated with feminine energy. It represents the shadow and dark matter energy in the universe. The yang represents the positive principle and is associated with masculine energy. It is characterized as open, light, and stoic. To better understand why the negative principle, darkness, is related to the feminine and why the masculine, light, is associated with the positive energy, I will detail the phenomena of electromagnetism as it relates to our bodies and the universe. In science class, we were taught that the atom is the smallest unit of matter that forms a chemical unit or unit of energy. Every human is made up of 7 octillion atoms of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. To get a sense of how many atoms that is, this is how this number looks written out. Atoms are composed of electrons in a compact nucleus of protons and neutrons. The electrons have a negative charge, and the protons have a positive charge. The formation of the atom is due to the clustering of the negative particles, the electrons, and the positive ones, the protons, vibrating at a high degree of intensity. The positive particle exerts energy upon the negative particle, causing the electron or the negative particle to assume different configurations and thus produce. So this is just at the smallest unit of matter. This is what you see occurring, this positive negative phenomena of electricity. So let us break down the phenomena of electricity to define the terms negative and positive. Electricity is the movement of electrons between atoms. We all know that. We all grew up knowing about the electricity in light bulbs, thunder, batteries, and home appliances. However, we rarely discuss the electricity in our bodies. Our bodies, which are made up of atoms, are specialized to conduct electrical currents. In particular, sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium have a specific electrical charge called ions that generate electricity in our bodies. It is fair to say that each human is surrounded by their own electric force field, which holds their atoms together. This field is also known as electromagnetism. So you see, we going from the small unit of matter, now we going to the body itself. Hold on one second, guys. I gotta go downstairs and get my groceries. When we think about electricity within the universe and our bodies, the definition of the terms positive and negative have specific meanings crucial to understanding the law of gender. The best way to explain the definition is to think of the batteries we use for our remote control. Keep in mind that this analogy is based on the definition from electrolytic cells. On one pole of the battery, we see a minus sign, which represents the negative side. This part is called the cathode, a negatively charged electrode by which electrons enter an electrical device. The cathode has a Greek etymology and means the generation or production of new energy manifested. So when we say that the feminine energy represents the negative pole, it means descent and path of generation. Electrons emerge from the negative pole, The end are referred to as the mother principle of electrical phenomena. Our ancestors and ancient master teachers did not associate the term negative with something wrong or something to be avoided, like it is now in Western patriarchy. The negative electron, which is the feminine principle, actively seeks a union with a positive proton, the masculine principle, and this attraction leads to new atoms or energy. This new atom is composed of the positive protons and negative electrons. However, when the union is formed, the atom is a separate thing having specific properties. This process is called ionization. The masculine principle directs inherent energy towards the feminine principle and thus starts in the creative processes. However, the feminine principle is doing the creative work to give birth, representing the impermanent nature of Shakti energy. So again, we skipped chapter 1, so some of these ideas may seem a little discordant, but I do not want to give you all the content over the internet. So you have to go and get the book to understand the concepts in its entirety. The other side of the pole on the battery is called the anoid, the positively charged electrode by which the electrons leave a device. The word anoid comes from the Greek word anondos, the way up out of the cell for electrons. That's what it means. An anoid is a positive charge through which conventional current flows into a device from an external circuit. This nature represents the permanent structure of Shiva, or the masculine principle. Now remember that our human body has an electromagnetic field made up of atoms, so the positive and negative form of our gender acts as electricity to procreate in the physical and metaphysical realm. The masculine and feminine principle cannot make operative energy without the assistance of the other. When the feminine, which is the negative, unites with the masculine, which is the positive, more atoms or organisms are born. Electromagnetism is the science behind the law of gender that Master Teacher taught our ancestors thousands of years ago. While it is true that both principles, masculine and feminine, exist in our brains, it does not negate the law of gender. Our physical bodies will have either a vagina or a penis, and in rare cases, both. In the yin and yang symbol, the yin, which is the feminine, lies a small white dot of masculinity. Within the yang, the masculine, lies a small black dot of femininity, representing that both principles are present in the supreme consciousness of the universe. On the third dimensional rim, planet Earth, these principles are dualistic and separated to understand contrast and soul evolution. The story of Adam and Eve is an occult analogy of electromagnetism in humans. Adam represents the atom, as well as the sun god Atum, and Eve represents the melanated Eve gene that created the human race. Eve also represents the moon. Adam is associated with the positive aspect of the electric current, and Eve represents the negative current. The story of Adam and Eve is a creation story of how both forces of polarity descend from universal consciousness and manifest in humans as the law of gender. During ancient times, in Egypt, Ethiopia, Greece, Rome, West Africa, and more, occult societies understood that the moon represented the subconscious mind and feminine energy, since people believed that the mastery of the subconscious mind was the key to manifesting one's desires. The occult societies worshipped the moon back in the day. The original name for the moon was called Sin. In particular, Sin was the name of the ancient moon goddess in the Mesopotamian religions of Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, Babylonia, and Aram. Occult societies redacted the original text of the Bible to prevent the rest of humanity from mastering their subconscious mind and balancing their feminine energy within their bodies. This action not only desecrates the divine feminine, it meant that only those in certain priesthoods would know the key to manifestation. For instance, the world was told they were born in sin, which means we are born in feminine energy. This statement is true biologically because all human embryos start life as females, as do all embryos of mammals. About the second month, the fetal will have to develop enough androgens to offset the maternal estrogens, and maleness develops. Women also birth all humans, so the phrase born in sin is a double entendre. Therefore, the human race was told if we want to be free from sin, the divine feminine, we must accept the sun or morning star as our savior. In the Bible, Jesus is referred to twice as the morning star. So, the idea of getting rid of sin to worship the sun is an occult analogy for the Pisces age, which stood for dogmatism, male rulership, war, and organized religion. Unfortunately, this age created a lot of unbalances in the earth, because it is not aligned with the divine feminine. The penultimate truth about the law of gender is that both energies should harmonize to manifest higher consciousness and evolution. They shouldn't try to dominate one another for arbitrary reasons that are not even found in nature. To be frank, women and men have forgotten the science of electromagnetism, which is the cause of the dysfunctional relationships. Now we're going to read a sample from chapter 4, which is called The Law of Gender in the Animal Kingdom. Historically, biologists projected gender roles we saw in society onto various animals to understand sex differences. It was thought that males were promiscuous and dominant across the animal kingdom, while the females were passive and docile. Much of our modern understanding of gender in the animal kingdom came from Charles Darwin, and we all know who that racist motherfucker was. Biologists have since stated that this research was rooted in confirmation bias to lend credence to Western patriarchy. Luckily today, we have more accurate evidence to understand gender roles in the animal kingdom. To be frank, it will challenge our assumptions about gender. However, the law of gender still aligns with the laws of electromagnetism I expounded upon earlier. I will cover the evolutionary process of sexual selection, mating rituals, and the gender roles in various animals to expand our consciousness on the law of gender. The evolutionary process of sexual selection is million years old, and it still stands today with little deviation. So I know a lot of people don't believe in the idea of evolution. So when I'm talking about evolution, is not based off of what Charles Darwin was talking about at all. This is completely different pedagogy. When I mention evolution, we talk about the evolution that you can see again with physical causation with your naked eye. So obviously you see evolution every day when you see a pregnant woman with a fetus growing into a baby, over the 9-month period. That is evolution in its rawest definition, as well as like a sperm going to the fertilize the egg, and then the egg growing. That's also the concept of evolution, the way a tree grows, or the way a tadpole evolves, or the way a butterfly, a caterpillar evolves into a butterfly. Various aspects of evolution can be seen with the naked eye. So that's what we're basing these theories off of. Not talking about the theory of the humans sharing a common ape ancestor and all that stuff. That's not what I mean when I talk about evolution. So I want to be very clear on that. But there's also biological evolution processes within the humans itself that is very much well documented and accurate. So that's what I mean when I talk about the evolutionary process of sexual selection. So let's begin. The evolutionary process of sexual selection is millions of years old and still stands today with little deviation. As we know, females have eggs that tend to be huge compared to sperm and often have an expiration date. In the human species, women have approximately 1 million eggs. Only about 300,000 remain by puberty. Only 300 to 400 will ovulate in a woman's lifetime. By contrast, sperm can be produced by the millions. A human male who has reached puberty will produce millions of sperms every day. During spermatogenesis, testicles make several sperms per day, about 1,500 per second. In the animal kingdom, competing for females vary. This is very important part. So if you're listening to nothing else, just listen to this part, because this is very fascinating stuff. However, a male will compete in 3 ways depending on how that species has evolved and what is conducive to their survival. Because remember, evolution has to do with what is benefit to a species survival as well. The 3 ways are acoustical, illustrations of strength and skills, and gift giving. So I want to read that again. The 3 ways that males will compete based on the way they evolve and what is conducive to their survival are acoustical, illustration of strength and skills, and gift giving. So in nature, many male species have evolved to have longer, louder, and more complex vocalizations because it subconsciously sends the signal of having long stamina. Females can develop attraction to males solely from acoustics alone. Males will use songs when they sense female urine or hormones. For instance, male birds and whales learn to serenade females through vocalizations. At the same time, the gymnotoid fish attracts females with electrical wave sounds. Mice attract females with ultrasonic sounds. Male koalas, red deer, hyenas, and the tungara frog use acoustic signaling to attract females, among many other animals. Illustration of strength are the second way males compete to attract females in the animal kingdom. This is called male-male competition. This is really interesting. Male-male competition is mainly found in mammals. It consists of male animals competing to show that they can protect the harem. For instance, bulls establish breeding activity by rank. So do gorillas. It's like mad animals that do this. So this is really cool. And some of the societies are both matriarchal and patriarchal societies that do this. Everything that I'm telling you, as far as these behaviors that can be found also in humans, are found in both societies, whether they're matriarchal or patriarchal, for the animal kingdom. So let me get back to reading. So for instance, bulls establish breeding activity by rank. They have a fighting competition to see who will become the dominant male. The fighting is rarely fatal. Male giraffes will compete for females by using their long necks to fight and exhibit dominance. Northern elephant seals fight for sexual access each year. Unsuccessful males may not mate at all, while successful males will have access to 30 to 100 females. The males with the least strength can occasionally try to have sex with the master seal's females when he is not looking. The other males will also have a more challenging time getting food because the dominant male gets to eat first. There have been times when some males have stayed ashore for more than 3 months without food, and some seals they just flee and leave on their own. The African elephant engages in male-male fighting, which is also male-male competition, due to a periodic condition called must. And we all know that elephants are matriarchal. Testosterone levels in the elephant and must can be 60 times greater than usual, making them highly aggressive and accompanied by a significant rise in reproductive hormones. Male elephants have the most reproductive success when they are in must, and it helps them win fights. A fight between an elephant and must and one who is not can be dangerous because the testosterone level in the must male elephant will kill the latter. So other examples of male-male competition in the animal kingdom include the gorilla, the American black bear, rams, bighorn sheep, meerkats, lions, elks, beetles, chimpanzees, humans, and orangutans. Male-male competition for sexual selection is not limited to animals. Male plants also compete for mating opportunities by proving that they can successfully move pollen to the stigma of a female flower using water, wind, and insects. The evolution of flowers is partly due to the male-male competition for greater pollen production. So we went through the acoustics, we went through the male-male competition, and we see that in the human race where males compete for women's attention and things that they do for women's attention. And you know, with me, I tend to be more attracted to men based off of their acoustics. That's usually my go-to in determining my attraction, is whether I can listen to their voice all day. Like, so there's some biological truth that's throughout all of this species, as you can see. So let's keep going. So now we're going to be on the last one, gift giving. Gift giving is the third factor in sexual selection to attract a mate. In the animal kingdom, species provide nesting materials, food items, and pondweed to show reliability. For instance, the great crested grebes give pondweed to females to build their nest with. The male ornita, which is like a spider, gives females insects wrapped in silk. Once she starts eating the prey, the male will mate with her, get on the back of her to have sex with her. The Eurasian jay male bird gives female moths and worms as a gift. The bonobo monkeys offer nuptial gifts for copulation, usually in the form of food. Male penguins give females pebbles since they are used to build nests. Pebbles are extremely hard to come by in Antarctica. So when a male penguin gives a female penguin a pebble, it means he worked hard to find it and would like to build a nest together. The male dolphin gives his mate a sponge while playing a tune from his blowhole and striking a banana pose. The ability to retrieve a sponge from the ocean floor shows strength because they are difficult to pull and release a toxin. Only the most intelligent dolphins can gather sponges safely, so females view this ability as having high levels of competence. The praying mantis offers himself as a gift during or after sexual activity. The praying mantis' main goal is to copulate so it can produce offspring and pass on its genes. The praying mantis's drive to ensure that its offspring will survive is so strong that he provides himself as the nourishment to give them the best possible start in life. Male humans also engage in gift giving to attract women. Men will pay dowries, offer flowers, chocolates, courtship, dates to show interest. Other species that gives gifts include the crow, moths, kingfishers, cats, parrots, and lovebirds. Sexual selection in the animal kingdom is complex. However, how males and females interact based on a primal instinct to ensure their chance to produce offspring is consistent. Beyond understanding how sexual selection influences the law of gender in nature, it is also essential to understand the organizational structures found in nature that are affected by gender. Many animals have matriarchal or patriarchal structures within their societies. I want to detail what this looks like for various species. In general, animals behave in distinct ways that appear to be biologically hardwired instead of socially constructed. Except for the human species, gender roles in the animal kingdom are not due to acculturation. So that just means like humans, we let our culture kind of also influence our gender as well. And a lot of the citations for all of this that I'm saying is in the back of the book. Obviously, I have lots of citations about some of this stuff that I'm saying. But anyways, let's keep going. In patriarchal societies, male holds the primary leadership power, and it is opposite for the matriarchal societies in which the females provide the leadership. It is important to note that leadership does not mean dominance. Instead, it is a role assumed when a problem needs to be solved by coordinated action and organization. I will detail how matriarchal and patriarchal societies play out for some species. So at this part, I just go into like all these different animals, listing, their societal structures. So I think we start with the patriarchal societies first, or maybe the matriarchal societies. I can't remember, but we just go through a list of like some of the more popular animals that we think are so cool and stuff, and we do it for both the matriarchal and patriarchal societies. But again, the three ways that males attract the females are found in both societies, regardless of what the organizational structure is, and it's consistent upon species, whether it's the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the human species. So now I am going to read one more sample. We're going to do one more sample from chapter 5. And chapter 5 is titled Incentivization, Cooperation, and Reciprocity. So again, you're going to have to get the whole book because there's huge chunks missing out. We didn't even read none of chapter 1. And we skipped around for every chapter, for chapter 3 and 2 and 4. I think we skipped all of chapter 3 too. Yeah, we skipped all of chapter 3. So you're going to want to go and just get the book and reread it and take notes and absorb the information as well. So let's continue with chapter 5. In gendered social constructs such as patriarchy and matriarchy, there is incentivization that must take place for both genders to go along with the social order. When it is not beneficial to both parties, societal rifts and dysfunction will ensue. For the last 2,000 years, we have been living under a patriarchal social structure. While many today argue that there are no benefits that would incentivize a woman to go along with patriarchal society, I will make a case for the intended incentives that made women, who actually outnumber men and control the gestation process, go along with a patriarchal society in the first place. Chapter 4 detailed how patriarchal and matriarchal societies in the animal kingdom play out to illustrate how arbitrary these systems are to the human consciousness. Humans get to choose which system they want at any given time based off of resources, based off of what makes sense, based off of what's pragmatic. So that's the beauty of that. But when I say arbitrary, I mean it simply by saying it is a social construct for the human species. Gender social structures, matriarchy and patriarchy, provide a function and benefit to an extent. When they no longer serve us, we recalibrate and enact a new one, which is what you see coming now. Every 2,000 years, we pretty much do this. Every 5,225 years, we do it as well. In a patriarchy, women agreed to male leadership, but not because we think it is inherently natural. It was because women thought the value of men providing resources in exchange for them submitting or cooperating could prove beneficial in stress reduction, less work time. and more time focused on child rearing. It was a social construct that women thought could be useful and could provide more efficiency in society. In terms of why men wanted patriarchal themselves, it most likely has to do with sexual selection and the biological hardwiring of the male-male competition, in which the men have more resources and have more access to women. So if you have more resources in a patriarchal society, you give more access to women. It's in a matriarchal society, the resources, believe it or not, becomes less important in favor of other things that men that are expected of men and women. Yes, so however, in exchange for those resources, women must behave in a manner that would incentivize a man to provide and protect her. So in patriarchal societies, and even to an extent in matriarchal societies, you are going to see women behaving in a manner that will get a man that will enable a man, or engender a man rather, to say, okay, I want to provide and protect this particular woman, and we're going to breed and reproduce and all that stuff. Those behaviors have some biological hardwiring, but again, many of the dogmatism and redacted religious systems with no basis in nature have kind of distorted what all of this stuff means. In a patriarchy, the status of the men is contingent upon the quality of living their women and children have, the number of resources they obtain, and their ability to protect it. So that's really big when you think about, I want a patriarchal society. Okay, it's gonna be the success of that patriarchy is going to be determined about the status of the men, contingent upon the quality of living their women and children have, the number of resources they obtain, and their ability to protect it. If they cannot live up to that status, women will not be incentivized to go along with patriarchy unless they're religious, because women do not inherently believe they must submit to a man solely because he has a penis. Instead, they will submit to wisdom, knowledge, and good leadership and courage. If a man does not possess these traits, there would be no incentive to agree with a patriarchy, and both men and women will dismantle it, because both are going to be unhappy. Gender social systems are a social contract in which there is implicit agreement amongst the members of the society to cooperate for social benefits. For example, women submit to men in exchange for protection and provisions. Women have their interests in terms of self-preservation that would allow them to enact and agree with patriarchal systems. So a lot of this, again, this is based off this social contract, just social interaction. But what humans have done have used these dogmas and doctrines to sort of enact deeply unnatural ideas about how this stuff plays out, and then everyone's fighting like cats and dogs and wondering why nobody can get along, because it's not based off the laws of electromagnetism and what you see in nature. So let's keep going. I think we have just a little bit more. So incentivization, rooted in the law of gender, should be the only way to justify a gendered social structure, because it contains the following: nature. Women and men are biologically hardwired to create the best circumstances that will allow them to procreate and diminish suffering. The sexual selection process will govern what men and women bargain with to get their needs met. The next one is pragmatism. Our biological sex will influence gender behaviors and inherently influence social systems. For instance, men have more muscle mass than women, so collecting wood, building, and hunting will make more sense. Women must tend to the children, so it makes more sense for women to garden and cook. Whatever roles will increase efficiency in society will be embraced. Some of those roles will be influenced by cultural values, and I do have to say that some of those roles could be fluid. You know, I didn't add that sentence in there, but if I could rewrite this, I would have said that some of this stuff could be a little in flux. Like pragmatism is a thing, but actually I do cover what makes sense, like based off of someone's individual couples dynamic, and because people have work schedules, people have things, different skill sets and different things they bring to the table in a relationship, and that is, to me, a couple's business. So I don't think people should try to be fit in a box or fit in a mold, so to speak. I think there's certain things in our relationships that make something productive, like communication or reciprocation, which I cover in cooperation and pragmatism. I do think that, and even the benefits that one would get. But a lot of besides the foundation, once you reach the foundation, I think that humans should have flexibility in how they want their particular relationship to play out. So After that, there's journal prompts for the shadow work. So it says prompts for both men and women to use to do your shadow work individually. Now, I think I put 50 journal prompts in there, but I'll just give you like the first couple of them. So like one of the journal prompts are, what are your triggers and what do you think caused them? And then another one is there anyone you hold a grudge against? If so, what is preventing you from forgiving them? Do you feel misunderstood? If so, what are the misconceptions? What do you dislike most about yourself? What is the worst thing you have ever done in life? Why do you think it is the worst? And why did you do it? Are you happy with where you are in life? Is there anything that you can do to improve it? How was your childhood growing up? Was it negative or positive? Outline the most significant memories that you have of your younger years. What is your relationship like with your family? Has your connection strengthened since you were an adult, or has it gotten worse? So then again, at the end of the book, there is the conclusion, and then there are a list of citations and references in the book for people to know, especially when I was talking about like the animals and making all those claims. Like I had to actually go and get like science books and go in scientific journals and like try to dig through some of those things that I was looking at. But now I want to discuss, why my focus on animal behavior in comparison, to humans, because some may feel that is an oversimplification, to try to say, well, we are different than them as far as our higher level mental capabilities. And some cognitive procedures are shared by a variety of species. I do want to say that for the record, and you can research this for yourself, while others are unique to humans. But when I'm talking about the sexual selection process and the way a male attract a female, this is what I'm talking about, cognitive procedures that are biologically hardwired. And there are two types of processes or functions. You have your lower mental activities, such as learning and responding to the environment in certain basic ways. That's where we're talking about like your evolutionary biology. And again, not the stuff from the Western point of view, but the indigenous point of view. For example, figuring out what meals to eat, or where to go, how to get food, how to find water, how to produce offspring and all that stuff. Those are the lower mental activities. And this came from a theory by Vygotsky. If anybody's interested, I want to give credit to where this theory actually comes from. And humans, unlike other species, they do employ higher mental functions in unique ways. So, for instance, deliberate focus on processes that aid learning memory. That's unique to a human. Logical reasoning is unique to a human. So the biological potential for developing lower mental abilities is built in. That is across species again. But however, society and culture are necessary for the growth of the higher mental abilities, and that is what separates us from animals. So if anybody wanted to know, yes, there's a degree of consciousness, but in many ways, again, when you're looking at some of the really basics in nature, that's when you start to see like, hey, they do that too. Lions do this, elephant do this, same shit that humans do. And that's where I'm saying, like, let's look at some of the lower mental abilities in terms of sexual selection and gender dynamics. That stuff that is biologically hardwired is what I would say. So I wouldn't even categorize that as lower mental abilities like Vygotsky does. I would just say that biologically hardwired. So another thing that I wanted to expound upon is like the electromagnetism. Like why do I depend so heavily on that? Why do I depend so heavily on electromagnetism as a basis for like these theories? And it is a branch of physics that deals with the study of like electric and magnetic fields. So it is concerned with how those fields interact with matter and with each other. So electromagnetism is important for understanding the behavior of light, electricity, magnetism, but it's also important for understanding the structure of atoms and molecules. That's why we went through that earlier. Study of electromagnetism is also important for understanding the behavior of living things. Boom. And you go look this up for yourself. Like, just go look up what is electromagnetism do. What does the study of it do? So I'm not just like, trying to lead you off a cliff here, well, so many of the processes that occurs in our bodies, such as like the nerve impulses, your muscle contractions, they involve electromagnetism, straight up. And the study of electromagnetism is also important for understanding the behavior of the Earth's magnetic field, which affects navigation and communications. And now you're getting out into the universe. So you see electromagnetism playing out within your body, within one another, through symbolic, even the concept of sex, you know. And then you see electromagnetism play out all over the universe, all over the Earth. You know, so this is a very important concept. It's one of the forces it's one of the forces of the universe. You know, you have 4 forces. You have nuclear, weak nuclear force, strong nuclear force, electromagnetism, and gravitational force. So, you know, pretty cool shit. So I merged the ideas of electromagnetism with the evidence of physical causation, like and physical causation is also a branch of physics. So again, I do a lot of integrating shit, you know, and that deals with the study of cause and effects in the physical world. So it is concerned with how things happen, why they happen, and what happens as a result. So one of the most important aspects of like physical causation in the law of cause and effect is that the law states that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. In other words, for every cause there is effect, and for every effect there is a cause. So this law is what makes it possible for us to predict and understand the behavior of physical systems, or I would argue physical phenomena. And when you merge that physical causation and electrical magnetism together, it kind of gets you can understand when someone makes the claim that a male human and a female human who are made up of atoms gonna fuck, and they're gonna do the egg and the sperms and produce a whole new life. Now these are a bunch of atoms expressing itself to produce a new molecule, another atom with having its own properties. So that's why I merged the two, because I'm like, no, we can see the laws of electromagnetism, okay, of course out in nature, but like this stuff is playing out between males and females. And that electromagnetism, when you look at it on the battery, you break down electricity itself, that's when you can see, okay, this concept of this negative and this positive, this feminine and this masculine, that is where that shit come from. It's playing out on the third dimensional realm, all the way out to the source realm, all the way out to the universe, all the way out to the multiverse. So that is why I relied so much on that. And believe it or not, another aspect of physical causation is energy itself. There is a branch of physics that studies that. And you know, energy is the ability to do work or to create change. So it's what makes us possible to move objects, to heat things up, to make things happen. We know this. It's energy. It's also what makes it possible for us to create new things and new manifestations. So all of the matter in the universe is made up of energy, and we know that. And all of these forces that affect matter are also made up of energy. So when we talk about, you know, the physical causation is important not only for its own sake, but also for the application to other fields. You know, you can use the study of physical causation. That's why I rely so much on it. So you know, to study the laws of thermodynamics, you know, which describe the behavior of heat and energy. And whatnot. The study of physical causation is also important for understanding the behavior of living things as well. Again, so we've seen this idea of of using certain theories and phenomena from the occult realm, from various ancient teachings, from indigenous pedagogy, and what you can see with your damn naked eye in nature, what you can see with your eyes, is the root that we need to be using. You know, when we want to come up with our gender social structures and whatnot. So I really thank y'all for listening to my little mini book reading. Again, cop the book, because I did not read the whole thing. We done skipped all over the place, and it's some deep shit. Like, I really got deep with it. You know, I had to do a lot of studying. Like, when I say I had to crack open them books for this bad baby, you know, because I wouldn't know what the hell I was talking about. And you know, I have a very unique approach to scholarship in which I do the interdisciplinary mode, but I also do not mind getting metaphysical with you. You know, I'll get metaphysical with you all day. I also rely on indigenous pedagogy, whether that is from my own culture, Black American culture, or some of the things that I've learned from African culture or the Caribbean culture. Some cool things that can be found in melanated people globally. But because a lot of the concepts of science and all these things that I'm even talking about, like electromagnetism, that's talked about 10,000 years ago. It's not something that was just recently discovered. Even this idea of physical causation, like melanated people come up with all these things and these theories of and then what happened to us globally in terms of the colonization and whatnot. And now you have these epistemologies of knowledges where people think that all of this stuff is Western, so they must throw it all away or ignore all of it. No, a lot of the basis of what as science, physics. Are you kidding me? Physics was talked about 5,000, 10,000 years ago. You could probably go back 20,000 years for physics. Really? This is some really cool stuff. I want to thank y'all so much for giving me your time, and y'all can send me emails of questions that y'all want to ask and regarding the material itself. So I love y'all, and I'm gonna talk to y'all later. Bye.